Enemy at the Gates turned one sniper duel into a World War II legend. Vasily Zaitsev was real, his rifle was real, and during the Battle of Stalingrad he became one of the Soviet Union's most celebrated snipers. The ruined city around him was also real. German and Soviet soldiers hunted one another through collapsed factories, shattered apartment buildings, and mountains of broken concrete. A careless movement behind a window could be fatal. A reflection lasting less than a second could reveal a sniper's position. But the German marksman at the center of the movie's story is surrounded by mystery. In the film, Major König is Germany's greatest sniper. He is sent to Stalingrad for one purpose: to find and kill Zaitsev. The two men study each other through the ruins. They wait for hours without moving. Each knows that a single mistake will end the hunt. Finally, Zaitsev deceives his enemy and fires the fatal shot. It is one of the most famous sniper confrontations ever shown on film. There is only one problem. Historians have never found reliable German documentation proving that Major König existed. His name does not appear clearly in surviving German military records. No sniper school commander matching the movie's character has been confirmed. Even accounts supporting the duel disagree about the German officer's real name. Zaitsev himself described hunting an elite German sniper. Soviet wartime reporting also helped spread the story. But was this an authentic duel between two master marksmen? Was it an ordinary sniper encounter transformed into a legend? Or was the entire confrontation created to give the Soviet people a hero during the most desperate battle of the war? To understand what Enemy at the Gates got right, what it changed, and what may never have happened, we must first meet the real Vasily Zaitsev. His true story did not begin with a Hollywood duel. It began with a young hunter in the Ural Mountains, long before anyone imagined that his name would become a weapon of war. Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev was born in 1915 in the southern Ural region of the Russian Empire. He grew up in a rural environment where hunting was not entertainment. It was a practical skill connected to survival. According to Zaitsev's later accounts, his grandfather taught him how to move silently, observe animal behavior, and wait without revealing his position. He learned that accuracy began long before pulling the trigger. A hunter first had to understand the landscape. These lessons would become crucial in Stalingrad. Zaitsev did not initially enter the Second World War as an army sniper. He served in the Soviet Pacific Fleet, working in an administrative and financial role far from the central fighting. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union, he repeatedly requested a transfer to the front. Eventually, his request was accepted. In September 1942, Zaitsev arrived with the 284th Rifle Division as the Battle of Stalingrad was reaching a catastrophic stage. He was 27 years old, older and more experienced than the frightened young recruit portrayed at the beginning of Enemy at the Gates. The film shows Zaitsev arriving in a locked railroad car before crossing the Volga under German air attack. He is then sent into battle without a rifle and told to take one from a dead soldier. This creates an unforgettable introduction, but it should not be treated as a literal reconstruction of Zaitsev's arrival. The Red Army suffered terrible shortages and organizational failures during the war, particularly in earlier disasters. However, the movie exaggerates and combines different events to create immediate chaos. The real Zaitsev was already an experienced serviceman. He volunteered for combat and arrived as part of an organized division. What the film does capture is the terrifying environment awaiting him. The Volga crossing was exposed to German artillery and aircraft. Smoke covered the river. Boats carried reinforcements toward a city that appeared to be burning from one end to the other. Men entering Stalingrad could see wounded soldiers moving in the opposite direction. Beyond them were the ruins where Zaitsev would discover that the hunting skills of his childhood had found a new and terrible purpose. By the time Zaitsev entered Stalingrad, the city had become one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Germany had launched its summer offensive in 1942 with two major objectives: the oil fields of the Caucasus and control of the Volga River. Stalingrad stood along that river. Capturing it would interrupt Soviet transportation and protect the German advance. Its name also gave it enormous symbolic value to both Hitler and Stalin. German forces reached the city after devastating aerial bombardment. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to burning ruins. But the destruction did not make Stalingrad easier to capture. It created a battlefield that favored defenders. Collapsed buildings broke German formations into smaller groups. Tanks struggled through debris. Cellars, drainage systems, factories, and damaged walls became defensive positions. The distance between the two armies sometimes shrank to the width of a street or a single floor inside the same building. Snipers became especially effective. A marksman could conceal himself inside rubble that appeared completely lifeless. He could fire through cracks in walls, behind twisted steel, or from the darkness of a ruined factory. After shooting, he might remain perfectly still or disappear through passages connecting nearby positions. The psychological effect was enormous. A German soldier did not need to see the sniper to know he might be watched. Crossing an exposed street, carrying supplies, or approaching a wounded comrade could become a deadly decision. Zaitsev understood this environment instinctively. He studied patterns. He learned where German officers gathered and when soldiers repeated the same movements. He avoided obvious firing positions and searched for locations that blended into the ruined city. His early successes attracted attention. Soviet accounts credit him with dozens of kills within a short period. He was given a scoped Mosin-Nagant rifle and assigned to work as a sniper. But Zaitsev's importance went beyond his own shooting. He began teaching other soldiers how to observe, conceal themselves, select targets, and survive the enemy's response. These trained marksmen became known as Zaitsev's students. And as his confirmed tally increased, Soviet newspapers discovered something else. In a city where the population desperately needed hope, Vasily Zaitsev could become more than a soldier. He could become a symbol. Enemy at the Gates correctly recognizes the importance of propaganda during the Battle of Stalingrad, but it simplifies how Zaitsev became famous. In the film, political officer Danilov witnesses Zaitsev kill several German officers with extraordinary precision. Danilov then begins publishing stories about him, transforming an unknown soldier into a national hero. The real process was less personal and far more systematic. The Soviet government had promoted military heroes since the beginning of the German invasion. Newspapers, radio reports, posters, and military publications celebrated soldiers who represented courage, discipline, and resistance. This was not unique to the Soviet Union. Every major power used wartime propaganda. But Stalingrad created an extraordinary need for heroes. The city was under constant pressure. Soviet casualties were enormous. Germany had conquered vast areas, and victory was far from certain. Stories about individual soldiers gave the larger battle a human face. Zaitsev was ideal for this purpose. He was a volunteer from a modest background. He was calm, skilled, and effective. His surname came from the Russian word for hare, making it easy for newspapers to build memorable language around the hunter and his prey. Official Soviet records credit Zaitsev with 225 enemy soldiers killed during the Battle of Stalingrad, including enemy snipers. Even if individual wartime kill counts can be difficult to verify with complete certainty, there is no serious doubt that Zaitsev was an experienced and highly successful marksman. He also trained other snipers, increasing his influence beyond his personal record. The Soviet press reported his achievements while the battle was still unfolding. His face appeared in newspapers. His name became known across the front. This fame had a military benefit. It encouraged other soldiers to become snipers. It gave exhausted defenders a story in which patience and intelligence could defeat German firepower. But fame also made Zaitsev a valuable target. Soviet accounts would soon claim that the Germans had noticed him. According to the emerging legend, Germany sent an elite marksman into Stalingrad specifically to eliminate the Soviet hero. His mission would create the confrontation remembered by millions. But the deeper we examine this German sniper, the less certain his identity becomes. In Enemy at the Gates, the German sniper is Major Erwin König, played by Ed Harris. He is calm, disciplined, and almost impossible to deceive. The film presents him as the director of an elite German sniper school and a personal representative of the German High Command. His arrival changes the story. Zaitsev is no longer only hunting ordinary enemy soldiers. He is being hunted by a man whose skill may be equal to his own. But attempts to identify the historical König produce contradictory answers. Some versions call him Major Erwin König. Others identify him as Heinz Thorwald. Some claim he directed a sniper school near Berlin. Other accounts place him at a training facility in a different location. No surviving German military document has conclusively confirmed an officer matching the complete story. This absence does not automatically prove that no duel occurred. Many German records were destroyed during the war. Soldiers sometimes used false names. Small sniper engagements were not always documented in detail. but the story describes a supposedly important officer sent on a special mission by German command that should have created some record, especially if he was responsible for a major sniper school. Historians have searched without finding convincing confirmation. The main evidence comes from the Soviet side, particularly Zaitsev's own account. In his memoir, Zaitsev described a prolonged hunt for an exceptionally skilled German marksman. Soviet intelligence reportedly learned that a German sniper had arrived with a mission to kill him. Zaitsev did not simply walk through the ruins until he found his opponent. He studied recent casualties, examined possible firing positions, and waited. The German sniper understood concealment too well to expose himself easily. For days, both sides watched an area of ruined ground. Zaitsev believed the German was hidden somewhere ahead, but every obvious position appeared empty. Then he noticed something that did not belong. Near a pile of bricks was a sheet of metal with a small area of disturbed ground beneath it. The hiding place looked insignificant. That was precisely why Zaitsev suspected it. According to Zaitsev's account, he and fellow sniper Nikolai Kulikov focused their attention on the sheet of metal. They could not fire without confirming the target. A wasted shot would reveal their position. If the German sniper was watching, he might kill them before they had another opportunity. The men remained concealed. Hours passed. The battlefield around them was filled with noise, but the duel itself depended on silence and stillness. Every broken wall could hide an observer. Every small reflection might come from glass, water, or a rifle scope. Zaitsev needed to force the German sniper to reveal himself. Kulikov raised his helmet slightly, creating the impression of a careless movement. A shot struck it. Kulikov cried out and collapsed as if he had been killed. The deception worked. Believing he had eliminated one of the Soviet snipers, the German marksman moved just enough to examine the result. Light reflected from his position. Zaitsev fired. The German sniper was killed. Zaitsev wrote that the enemy's documents and rifle were later recovered. Soviet accounts claimed the rifle scope was preserved as evidence of the victory. This is the basic historical story behind the movie's final confrontation. But the film changes nearly every dramatic detail. Danilov does not sacrifice himself to expose the German sniper in Zaitsev's memoir. The German does not remove his cap and silently accept his death. The confrontation does not end at a railway yard exactly as shown. Those scenes were created for cinema. The supposed duel in Zaitsev's account is shorter, less theatrical, and based on a traditional sniper deception involving a helmet. Yet even this version raises questions. If the rifle and documents were recovered, where is the documentation clearly identifying Major König? A sniper scope associated with the duel has reportedly been displayed in a Russian military museum, but an object alone cannot prove the identity or complete biography of the dead German. The account establishes that Zaitsev said the confrontation occurred. It does not provide independent confirmation of every detail. And another major problem remains. The story became famous in the state where military achievements were carefully shaped for propaganda. The Soviet Union did not need to invent Zaitsev's skill. He was already an effective sniper with a remarkable combat record. But propaganda does not always create a story from nothing. Sometimes it takes an uncertain or ordinary event and transforms it into something larger, cleaner, and more symbolic. The duel contained everything Soviet propagandists could want. Zaitsev represented the ordinary Soviet citizen, a hunter from a rural family who volunteered to defend his country. His opponent represented the German military elite, a decorated officer and master instructor sent from Berlin. The Soviet soldier defeats him not through superior equipment, but through patience, intelligence, and understanding of the battlefield. It was the entire Battle of Stalingrad reduced to two men. That does not prove the duel was invented. It explains why the story was so valuable. Historians skeptical of the confrontation point to the lack of German records, the changing identity of the opponent, and the difficulty of confirming the recovered equipment. Supporters argue that the destruction of records and chaos of Stalingrad make documentary gaps unsurprising. There is also evidence that the story existed during or shortly after the battle, rather than appearing for the first time decades later. Writer Vasily Grossman interviewed Zaitsev and recorded material related to his experiences. Zaitsev later included the sniper hunt in his own memoir. This means Hollywood did not create the central legend. Enemy at the Gates inherited and dramatized a Soviet story that had circulated long before the film. The most responsible conclusion is not that the duel definitely happened exactly as described. It is also not that Zaitsev was a fictional hero. The truth lies between those claims. Vasily Zaitsev was real. His service at Stalingrad was real. His effectiveness as a sniper and instructor is supported by Soviet military records. He may also have killed a highly skilled German sniper after a prolonged hunt. What remains unproven is that this opponent was Major Erwin König, the director of a German sniper school sent personally to destroy him. That specific identity is the weakest part of the legend, and it is the part the film needed most. The disputed duel is not the only part of Enemy at the Gates that differs from history. The film opens with Soviet soldiers receiving rifles and ammunition separately. One man is told to carry the rifle, while another follows with bullets and waits for the first to die. This scene became one of Hollywood's most influential images of the Red Army. But historians criticize it as a misleading representation of Stalingrad. The Soviet military suffered weapon shortages, particularly during the catastrophic opening stages of the German invasion. However, portraying this method as the normal way organized reinforcements entered the Battle of Stalingrad greatly exaggerates the situation. The film also shows machine gunners immediately killing large numbers of Soviet soldiers who retreat from an unsuccessful attack. Blocking detachments did exist, particularly after Stalin's Order No. 227 demanded that Soviet forces take not one step back. They arrested deserters, returned soldiers to their units, and in some cases carried out executions. But historians argue that the film's mass shooting scene turns a complex and brutal policy into an exaggerated spectacle. The character of Tanya Chernova was inspired by a real Soviet woman associated with sniper activity, but the film's romantic triangle is heavily dramatized. Danilov's personal jealousy, his final sacrifice, and several other relationships serve the screenplay rather than the historical record. The real Zaitsev was not an innocent young civilian suddenly discovered in battle. He was an experienced serviceman, a Communist Party candidate, and a willing volunteer for frontline duty. Yet the movie also captures important truths. Stalingrad was unimaginably destructive. Snipers operated among ruins at extremely close distances. Propaganda shaped the public image of soldiers. Soviet defenders experienced hunger, exhaustion, and constant danger. The film gets much of the atmosphere right, while simplifying the history around it. That distinction matters. Enemy at the Gates is not a documentary. Its purpose is to turn an enormous battle into a personal story that audiences can follow. But the real Battle of Stalingrad was far larger than any duel. And while Zaitsev hunted through the ruins, millions of soldiers were participating in a struggle that would change the direction of the entire war. The fascination with Zaitsev and König can make Stalingrad appear to be a battle decided by snipers. It was not. The struggle involved armies, tanks, artillery, aircraft, factories, railways, and an enormous network of supply routes. German forces captured much of the city but failed to eliminate the Soviet defenders along the Volga. The Soviets continued sending troops and supplies across the river, often under intense bombardment. Inside the city, General Vasily Chukhov's 62nd Army fought for individual buildings, factory halls, staircases, and sections of ruined streets. The objective was not always to regain large areas. Sometimes it was simply to remain close enough to the Germans that their aircraft and artillery could not attack without risking their own troops. While the Germans concentrated on capturing the city, Soviet commanders prepared a much larger operation. On November 19, 1942, the Red Army launched Operation Uranus. Instead of attacking the strongest German positions inside Stalingrad, Soviet forces struck the weaker Romanian and other Axis units protecting the German flanks. The attacks broke through. Within days, Soviet armies met west of Stalingrad and surrounded the German 6th Army. More than 200,000 Axis soldiers were trapped in and around the city. Hitler refused to authorize a timely breakout. The German Air Force could not deliver enough food, ammunition, and fuel to sustain the encircled troops. Winter intensified the disaster. By early February 1943, the remaining German forces surrendered. Stalingrad destroyed an entire German field army and shattered the idea that Nazi Germany could not be defeated. Zaitsev did not single-handedly change the battle. No sniper could, but he represented something strategically important: the Soviet ability to turn the ruins into a weapon and force the Germans to pay for every movement. His story gave one recognizable face to a battle involving millions. That is why the Soviet Union celebrated him, and it is why, decades later, filmmakers chose his disputed duel rather than the movements of entire armies to introduce Western audiences to Stalingrad. So, did the sniper duel and enemy at the gates really happen? There is no completely satisfying answer. Vasily Zaitsev described hunting and killing a highly skilled German sniper during the Battle of Stalingrad. His account did not originate with the Hollywood film. Versions of the story circulated through Soviet sources and post-war writing long before two famous actors recreated it on screen. But historians have found no convincing German documentation confirming Major Erwin König as the director of an elite sniper school sent to Stalingrad to kill Zaitsev. The alternative name Heinz Thorvald creates further uncertainty. The recovered scope, changing details, and Soviet origin of the surviving account are not enough to prove the complete legend. The duel may have occurred against an unidentified German sniper. It may have been expanded and transformed by wartime propaganda, or it may have been created by combining several different sniper encounters into one perfect story. Unless new records appear, we may never know. But uncertainty about König should not erase the real Vasily Zaitsev. He fought at Stalingrad, trained other snipers, was credited with 225 enemy kills during the battle, and received the title Hero of the Soviet Union. He was wounded in the eyes but recovered and returned to military service. After the war, he lived in Kyiv and worked in the textile industry. Zaitsev died in 1991. Years later, his remains were reburied with military honors at Mamayev Kurgan, the enormous memorial overlooking the city once called Stalingrad. Enemy at the Gates gave the world a simple ending. Two snipers enter the ruins. One survives. The other becomes proof of his victory. History rarely offers that kind of certainty. The Soviet hero was real, the battlefield was real, the rifle was real. But the enemy at the center of the legend may have existed only in fragments. A name without records, a rifle scope without an owner, and a wartime story too powerful for the world to forget. If you want more forgotten war stories that sound impossible but really happened, subscribe and follow us.